We have C.H. Admirand, Mary Lancaster, Emily Murdoch, Sherry Ewing, and Meara Platt with us this week. And we are going to take as much time as we need to, because when I saw that these were the authors that were coming up, I said to Sean, I said, they're so much fun. I can't do just that half an hour. That's not enough time. We'll just get to talk about the books and nothing else. So she has green-lighted us to go long this time. Yeah. Ladies, thanks so much for taking the time to join us. I really appreciate it.
Oh, pleasure.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
So we have releases all week this week, and the first one is Mary Lancaster's book, which is Deserted, and it's book 3 in the Duel series. And I love the cover of this one. It's just so lovely. This whole series is just so lovely. But can you talk a little bit about her and why everyone's abandoned her? Because the setup is so sad.
Yeah, it is a bit sad, but she bears up well. She's the heroine is her name is Sophia, and she was once engaged to Giles, who was the hero of book 1, who in fact shot the Duke in the duel. And Sophia's been helping him, but he's in fact in love with somebody else. So she's not engaged to him anymore. He's gone off with the Duchess, but Sophia, the companion of the Duchess, so it's all a bit tangled up. But then the Duchess abandons her too. She goes off with her man, and poor Sophia's left behind. And then, worst of all, she gets to meet this Earl, the Lord Frostbrook, who is he was the Duke's second in the duel. So the Duke is obviously not a very nice man. So you wonder, why is this guy his friend, unless he's not very nice either? And he's kind of haughty and a bit of a rake where women are concerned. So she has no time for him, apart from she discovers she's met him once before when she was in a sort of Cinderella type drudge figure, and they had a bit of a romantic moment, but she's offended because he didn't respect her. So then she sees him again and thinks, yikes. So she's desperately trying to be all on her best behavior and thinks, oh, he'll never recognize me. He won't expect me to be in this position. But he does recognize her anyway, and they sort of move on from there. And they end up in a sort of fake engagement so that he can put his mother off the scent, because she keeps trying to marry him to that he's not remotely interested in, and besides he doesn't like being pushed around. So, and then lots of things happen. They have lots of adventures, and she thinks she can't possibly marry an earl anyway. But anyway, you'll just have to wait and see. But I'm sure you can work out what happens.
I love the idea of him seeing her when she's in her Cinderella phase, and her assuming that he won't recognize her. That's like yes. In My Big Fat Greek Wedding, where she says, I was Frump Girl, and he says, I don't remember Frump Girl, but I remember you. And it's like, oh, that moment of being seen when the hero sees the heroine, I think is just like, oh, it's funny. Oh, that sounds like so much fun. And that's it's book 3 in the series, and there are 4 books.
Yeah.
Beloved is the next one.
Yep, that's in August, I think.
Awesome. Well, the setup for the series is great. I love that it started with him shooting her husband, and then she falls in love with him. So all kinds of things can happen in this series.
Yeah, it's great fun. I had a blast with it.
So the next book that we have that releases this week is Sherry's book, which is her first Dragonblade book, and it's To Claim a Lion's Heart, and it's a Lion's Den book. So I love Lion's Den books, and I love the interconnected world. Sherry, can you tell us a little bit about your book?
Yeah, I had a lot of fun writing the story, and I was thrilled when I was asked to write in the Lion's Den world. My heroine she had a brief appearance in another of my Regency novellas. And so she was this wicked widow, and she has a terrible reputation, although she was born in society, but she married beneath her, and she just has this horrific start in life, and she just becomes part of this wicked widows club. And so there's like four of these women, and I had no idea. I knew they had to have a story somewhere. I just didn't know when I was going to find the time to write something. And then I was asked to join the Lion's Den, and I thought this was the perfect opportunity to redeem Mariah Henshaw and give her the happily ever after that she so rightly deserved. So her friend actually makes the arrangement with Mrs. Dove Lion to find her a husband, although Mariah certainly doesn't want to have anything to do with having a husband since her track record is horrendous. So, but she agrees because her friend has paid this huge, substantial amount of money. So she agrees. And that's where she meets Vincent, who is my hero. And Vincent just flowed onto the pages. He just I just love when a story and when characters just leap onto the page, and he was so effortless. But again, he's a marquis. He knows his responsibilities in life, that he's one day going to come into the title of a duke, and when he meets Mariah, he just wants to get her back into her rightful place. So I have brand new friends. His friends are all brand new characters. I've signed up for a couple more stories so that I can eventually redeem these other women as well, and have them all have their happily ever after. But I had a blast writing the story. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, great. Well, complicated characters are really fun, especially when they're not straightforward. This is a nice person kind of thing. It's like I like when you get a little bit more layer than that.
Right.
And I think that's tricky too. And heroes that flow onto the page, that's wonderful when it happens, when you get them right away.
I also, Jude Knight, who's one of the Blue Stocking Bells, a group of authors that I'm with, we do, our box sets are always interconnected with either a common theme or a story. So her and I actually wrote a couple of scenes. So I have a couple of her characters in my story. Hers was a Talons of the Lion that just came out, I think, a couple months ago.
Yeah,
and so now her characters are in my story as well. So we had a lot of fun doing that as well.
Oh, great. Yeah, her fairy tale series is still going on with the reverse.
Fabulous. With
the reverse series. We still have 2 more, I think, coming up very soon. So.
Yes.
Well, awesome. Well, we're very glad to have you, and
Happy to be here.
Glad that your first Lion's Den book was a good experience for you.
It was very much.
Awesome. And then the next book that releases this week, I'm pretty sure I got them in the right order, is C.H. Admirand's The Duke's Hammer, and it's the Duke's Guard series. And I'm going to tell you this, and I'm probably going to get in trouble with HR, but when Sean sent the email, it said the Duke's Hammy. So in my head, I think of that every time, because this is... But it's not the Duke's Hammer, which is much more manly.
He's a manly type of man, yes.
And he like this poor woman that he falls in love with.
She's been through the ringer before he even meets her.
What a rescuer he turns into be. I love that. What a champion. So, can you tell us a little bit about the book?
This is not my thing. I've tried to do this a couple of times, and I've learned recently I can write a book. I've been doing it for 28 years, but I cannot write back cover copy. So I'm going to try to give you a snippet. It's book 5. It's a spin-off series, The Duke's Guard. The original series is The Lords of Vice, and these are the 16 handsome as sin Irishmen who guard the Duke, his family, and his extended family. And I noticed that James appeared in almost every book so far. This is book 5 plus the 4 that I already wrote before, and then he has all his brothers and relatives still. So I'm going to try to, say, James, you've done enough. And I asked him why. And he said, well, it's because he was, charming. Everybody loves him. And what's not to love? He's handsome. And so I had to turn that down a little and say, okay, let's talk about something else. So he's undercover. And he is trying to find out who the latest person is that's trying to discredit the Duke and his family. And he's in this tavern in the bowels of London, and he sees her. And to him, she looks like an angel that's been battered. And his protective instincts are just like, I need to rescue this woman. And she doesn't feel that she's worthy of it because of what she's been through. She's alone. She's homeless. Her father was a vicar, her stepfather, but he passed away and the new vicar and his family were moving in, she had no options. She had no other family except her stepfather's distant cousin, who was like, I have a job for you. And it was in this tavern and the conditions are awful. But James Garahan enters and things change. And then things get really sticky because he finds out that he is part of the threats and the scandals. Apparently he has fathered 2 children, unbeknownst to him, for the
wait a minute.
he didn't know. I mean, this was new to him because
The blog doesn't say any of that stuff. What?
well, you know, I told you I can't write back cover five.
How many times have we talked about this book in the last 3 days and this never came up?
Yeah. Because remember I told you stuff happens in the middle? This is the stuff that happens in the middle. So yeah, he didn't because all of my men are very well. So no, he did not father Earl Lippincott son.
Assumed that he did. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, I feel much better now.
He did not father the Viscount Chatsworth's son either. So now that we have that clear, but you know, not only is he trying to get to the bottom of this, he finds out that he's in the middle of this, and he's like, "Oh my god!" So, but anyway, you know what? I'm going to stop talking because I don't know where to go from here. Happily ever after takes a while to get there. He ends up proposing 3 times. She turns him down like 1.5 times, which you have to read the story to figure out the halftime. But yeah, he gets his happily ever after, and so does she. But she gets kind of beat up in the meantime. Evil cousin. That's all.
She had enough of a rough start. We don't need. Okay, well, just promise us there's good stuff at the end.
But she is courageous.
There's good stuff at the end.
When she jumps out of the coach when it's still moving, so she's a very courageous. Well, probably wasn't a good idea though. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm done. Threw away the key.
Well, he's a very, very handsome Irishman, and he saves a virtuous woman who deserves to be saved, and there are no illegitimate children. Just possible threat. Boom!
There are people that think so. People are
evil. Like, this is a really long series. I love this. I love the idea of the Duke's Guard, like all of these separate men who all have their separate jobs to do to protect the Duke. But this is like going to be a 16-book series till it's done, isn't it?
Yes. And
who do we get next?
And next we get the second Garahan brother. Because I'm thinking the third because that's the one I'm writing. The second one my editor has. So we get Aiden next, and then Ryan, and then Darby. So we're done with the Garahans.
So many heroes, so little time.
That's true.
All right. So I think the next book that came, and I know it, I got it right, is Emily's book, and it's the Duke in Time Saves 9, and it's the Dukes in Danger series, and these are the men that don't have quite enough to do, so they do
I think
challenging things.
I think we've all met that man who has too much time on his hands and gets himself into mischief. I think we marry them.
We try not to. It doesn't always work out.
And I love this idea of dukes who, they're just bored. But they don't want to go to balls and write their name on someone's card and then stand up for a quadrille. They're just not into that. Sometimes they kind of accidentally fall into danger, but in book 4, which is coming out this week, A Duke in Time Saves 9, Byron Renwick, Duke of Sedley, is probably the favorite himbo that I've ever written. He is the most well-meaning, most stupid hero I have ever written. Like, he's got a heart of gold, but he makes real poor decisions. So we kind of open, Byron has had a family member murdered by the Glass Hand Gang, which is a gang that appears quite frequently in the background of my books. And so he is trying to balance vengeance and justice. He's trying to work with the law, but at the same time, he feels very emotional about this. And he gets word that the Glass Hand Gang is going to be attacking a mail coach that's leaving for Dover. So he rushes off to try and catch it. At the same time, Anne Mead is putting her younger sister on that mail coach. Their brother is in France, he is missing, and no matter what Anne, who's the eldest, says, her younger sister Beth is determined to go. And she said, right, well, I can't, you're a grown woman, off you go. just as the male coach disappears around the corner, Byron turns up and blurts out, everyone that coach is in danger. That's chapter 1. The beginning of chapter 2 is Anne going, right, well, we can't have that. Commandeering Byron's coach, commandeering Byron, and going on an adventure trying to catch up the male coach, while both keeping quite interesting secrets from each other while confined in a very small space, and unfortunately sharing only one bed at every single inn I take them.
Oh,
That's, you know, it's tragic when those inns are so full.
Oh no!
Hard.
I have to say, only one bed is one of my favorite tropes, and I have to be careful not to use it too often. But then I find I've saved it all up, so I have like 4 of them in one book. It was such a fun kind of, I mean, I wouldn't call it adventure, but it's very much this kind of hurtling across from London to Kent, desperately trying to catch up with the male coach, desperately trying to keep secrets from each other. And, you know, they're worried about Beth, who, bless her, is now in this male coach that is going to be attacked in 2 days' time. And they've got to get there and save her and the other 8 people in the male coach. So it's, you know, 9 lives hanging in the balance, but also hilarious flirtation from Anne, who is very dismissive of anyone who doesn't quite meet her caliber of intelligence, and poor old Byron, who is
I imagine he falls a smidge short.
desperate to please in about 5 minutes, and for a good chunk of the book, completely unable to. Bless him.
Well, that sounds like so much fun. And the next book of that series is up on pre-order now too. So
It is on pre-order, and it's Beth's story. So it's not Beth's story in the coach, but it's what happens when Beth finally gets to France, and decides that she's going to find her brother no matter what. Which again is a lot of fun to write. I really like the little Mead family. It's kind of like a kind of duo within the larger 12-book series, and they are very opinionated, very well born. Genteel poverty has kind of struck them a little bit. So they're very refined, and desperate to preserve the distinction of rank, but very unable to do so, unfortunately.
it sounds like so much fun, and the whole series has been so much fun. So
I've had a lot of fun. I gave myself a challenge of what is the most ridiculous meet cutes that I could have in chapter 1 for every book. So I have, you know, heroes getting knocked out in a boxing ring because he's been distracted by the heroine. I've got heroines marching into men's offices and demanding that they teach her everything they know, which is taken rather differently than maybe she was intended. I wanted to kind of get my hero and heroine on the page really, really quickly, but in a way that is just ridiculous. And everything kind of goes from there.
yeah, well, it sounds like so much fun.
yeah.
So we also have a Saturday release this week, which is unusual for us, but it's a much anticipated book in a brand new series by Meara Platt. So it is the Moonstone Marquess, and it's the Moonstone Landing series. And Meara, can you tell us a little bit about this one?
Oh yeah, I have been so eager for it to come out already. So finally, when I wrote this hero, Cormac, he's the Marquis. He is a tiger by the tail. That guy is flaming hot. He could, I mean, literally, fire was coming out of my fingers as I wrote this guy. And, you know, I couldn't control him. He's just wonderful. He's just.
Oh, those are the fun ones.
Yes. And his heroine, Phoebe, she can match him, you know, chapter for chapter. She's just wonderful also. Like, as wild as he is, she is just strong and just knows how to, you know, he falls in love with her. He's completely in love with her, which is a good thing, because otherwise he's such an arrogant ass, and you really want to sometimes just hit him in the, you know, back of the head and just behave yourself. But no, but he does behave himself, because that's my rule. My heroes, once they meet the heroine, all of their bad behavior is in the past. They are no longer, you know, they no longer chase women. They no longer entertain their bad habits, and they're looking to reform. And he's very much in need of reforming, but he knows it, and he's this whole series, the Moonstone Landing series, or these big books, are really about wounded heroes, men who come back from the war and their spirits are broken. There's something broken in them, and they're just looking for just to regain their footing, look for the solace and whatever. And Cormac is particularly difficult because he was a rake and arrogant and wealthy, never a bad guy, but just, he enjoyed himself. And but coming back from war, he's shot in the arm, wounded. The arm gets infected. He loses the arm.
Oh,
so now all of a sudden, he's angry. He's angry. He's, he feels out of sorts. He's still gorgeous, but it's just like all these things. He was very independent. All these things he could do himself. He just finds like it's very hard for him to accept help from others and stuff. So he's gone on a bit of a tear, just drinking very, like in a bad way, and when his best friend, the Moonstone Duke, right, finally tells him, you have to come out here to Moonstone Landing. You're going to have to find, you'll find some peace, you'll find whatever. And in the meantime, he's known about Phoebe. He's never met her. Cormac has never met her, but he's heard about her from his friend, the Duke, because the Duke is married to Phoebe's older sister. And they would joke about, to him about, oh no, she can tame you. She's the one who can do it. And it's kind of built up in him. And he's kind of felt now, after a couple of years, he felt that now he's ready to go to Moonstone Landing and he wants to meet Phoebe.
Oh, so he's choosing this.
Yes, he's choosing it, and he's putting a lot of hopes into making it work with Phoebe, because he feels that, he knows that he can't go on this path that he's been on. And he kind of wants to reform, but he's not really reformed yet. And so he comes to Moonstone Landing. He's bought a house. He's filled it with his no account, high society friends. And he's drunk and not paying attention to anything. And his brother, unbeknownst to Cormac, has sent his little nieces to visit him for the summer, thinking that, they're going to help too.
Yeah,
well,
he's turned over a new leaf, of course.
Yeah, it's because he's trying to turn over the new leaf. This is, and he loves his little girls. Well, he can't have them in the house with his friends. And his neighbor happens to be Phoebe, next door at Moonstone Cottage. Well, he's drunk. His friends have been partying all night, and the nieces were delivered to her because the coachman wasn't going to drop them off in that brothel, right? So she's like settled, and she comes tearing over, and he's just like, he's a totally out of it, but completely disheveled and stuff. But as soon as she says she's Phoebe, he's like, he's just listening to her go off on him. How could you be so? You're vile. You reek. You're da. And he's like, oh, he kisses her, and she says, "Wait a minute, what's wrong with you? What is, what have you to say for yourself?" And she looks at her and he says, "Will you marry me?" So he's just like, you want to like smack him across the head, for being adult, but you also know that he's got the right. He's going to get it right. He will get it right. And so the story is really about them, just him coming to terms with the way with this injury that he has now, this wound, this arm. It's not going to get better. Not going to grow back. So he's got to just get himself calmed down and into a simple man. So this really the story of their journey and how he does, they will have their happy ending, but all the things that come back to bite him in the rear end because he has been a bad boy and in the past, and getting Phoebe to trust him. So So anyway, I love
Here was
this.
Steve
I've
Art.
written a lot of books. I've written almost 60 books, and I have to say, he got my heart. He really got my heart. So
Yeah.
with that,
And then
you know that this first one, the Moonstone Duke, has done very nicely. So we're actually, I was writing another series for Dragonblade, and then Catherine said, "Hold,
we would like more Moonstone Landing, please."
yes. So we are going to do more. I am going to put aside this other series, and we're going to do more Moonstone Landing books.
Yeah, we would like more Moonstone Landing, please. And we've got the Moonstone Major is the next one. Is that right?
Yes, and that one's So those the Moonstone Duke, the Moonstone Marquis, and the Moonstone Major, they're all written. They're just they've been waiting in queue just to get released. So now I'm going to do a 3 more in the series for so, and hopefully hopefully we'll have some more idiot heroes that we can reform.
I love them when they get hit hard. Like when they're not when they think they can outrun the love, and it's just like no. And I love when they get hit hard. That's
no, and it's good. And the thing that I love about Cormac is that he's ready. He wants to be in love, but he's
not ready.
He's not ready. He's trying, but he's
got
not
some
ready.
work to do. Oh, well, it sounds like so much fun, and I'm glad we're expanding the series because it has been received really well, and it's a lot of fun. So awesome. Well, so when we were waiting to start recording, CH and I were talking about hot flashes and Henry Cavill, and I'm not sure that either of those are necessarily appropriate for recording. But I wondered if we could talk a little bit, since Emily, you mentioned that only one bed is your favorite trope. And Catherine's doing a trope workshop coming up. So I know we've all been thinking about tropes a lot more than maybe, well, I don't know, maybe not more than we normally do, because I think we think about it quite a bit. But I wondered if we could all talk about what your favorite trope is, what you like to read, what you like to write, and whether they're different, whether you have different choices. Who would like to go first?
Well, I'll start.
Hey, Sherry, thank you.
Usually my favorite trope is probably enemies to lovers, because I love that angst of the hero and heroine being at odds against each other. So I really tend to write a lot of that. I like to read a lot of it. The first book that I ever wrote, If My Heart Could See You, was actually a medieval romance, and it's the conquering hero. Well, not he. Well, he is the hero, but the conquering knight sieging a castle. The damsel is hiding her identity from him, and it just takes off from there. So that, to me, I really love that whole enemies to lover trope, because there's just so much that you can do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Some really good angst, really turn up the tension.
Yeah. Well, and there has to be a reason for them to fall in love. I particularly like it when they're enemies, but they still see each other. And so, I'm thinking of True Blood with the Bill and Eric characters, and Bill is the one that you think is going to be the hero, but he doesn't really pay attention. And Eric is the one that's is in it for himself, but he still sees what has to happen. And I love it when they can see each other, even if they don't get along. That's I think a really compelling part of it.
Well, I like rivals to lovers, which is kind of a spin-off of enemies. That idea, rivals for lovers, directly competing for the same thing and being absolutely determined that I'm going to get it, and then by the end, it's like, no, you have it. No, you have it. No, just let's kiss.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. And that's particularly good in historical, because you have that whole gender power dynamic too that you can play with. That's so much fun too.
I have to say that my favorite is I have a couple, but one of them is very much that road trip romance, especially with the one bed. Amazing. These inns, only one bed, one room available. So, I love it when they're just that forced proximity, and that's fun. but I also like the wallflower and rake kind of, and you know, there's a lot of tropes that I really do enjoy. Most of them work for me. A few that I actually am not wild about is Secret Baby or.
I think Secret Baby is a lot more fun if you haven't actually had a baby.
It's also a lot easier to do in certain genres. I think historical is difficult because the scandal is like, well, everyone knows.
Yes.
Everyone knows.
Contemporary.
Yes.
It's a lot easier to do if it's contemporary. It's like, oh, well, I just moved, 5 states over. Who's to know?
No one knows yet. I like writing about hard-headed heroes. That's like one of my hashtags, and feisty women. Because I come from a long line of independent Irish women, and we don't like to be told what to do.
What, you?
I know, you know, right? And it comes through even if I don't want it to. But my husband was a really, really, really strong man, and he had a lot of integrity and honesty and compassion for others. So that always ends up in my heroes too. So I'm not really sure that I pay attention that much to tropes. I just do okay, I'm guilty. My characters tell me to do it, I do it. They want me to kill that guy, I am going to kill that guy. So I don't know if it's trope so much as it's the voice.
But there is something really lovely about that. And even the Duke's, even the name, the Duke's Guard, these are all a set of stand-up guys, it's those are heroes you can get behind. And when we were talking about earlier, about how your guy didn't have time to fall in love because he had stuff to do. I almost think it's more compelling when you see them actually fall, when they're so focused on doing the work that they're supposed to be doing, and then they get sidetracked.
What just happened? Mm-hmm. I didn't plan this. How did this happen? Yeah. But then I get in trouble with those honorable men because they don't want to ruin a woman's reputation. So I'm like, I'm in book 5, and there's only one out of those 5 guys that actually got to be with a woman that they're going to end up with before they got married. So I'm like, I don't want to be too predictable. You know what I mean? So I'm like, what the heck am I going to do now? So that's my next problem, because I don't want it to be all the same, but it's different reasons, but still our reader's going to say, oh my God, I have to wait so long till they get in bed. And
okay, here's my suggestion for that. Get a 6-sided dice or die, roll it, and whatever number you get, that's the chapter they have to make love in. And then you bring it right to the front, and then have all the emotional entanglement afterwards.
That's fun. Yeah, that's like marriage of convenience when they have to get married, and then they get all the fun stuff afterwards.
That's true. That's
nice for everyone.
Emily, thank you.
It forces you to do it quite early on in the story.
And I'm sure my characters will be like, okay.
All right.
I don't even need the whiskey.
You insist.
I like that. I'm gonna write that down. 6-sided. I don't have any. I'm gonna go buy one though.
You can probably find one online, just virtual dice, and tap it and it'll roll. I'm sure there'll be something online.
Okay, this is the difference between being as old as I am and then doing that.
Oh, shush.
Oh my gosh. Computers. Okay, so virtual. Got it.
You can message me later and we can find virtual dice together.
Thanks, Emily.
Mary, what about you? What's your favorite trope, either to read or to write?
I don't know if I have a favorite, to be honest. I like to be surprised when I'm reading, so I don't like it to be predictable. So I suppose I'm a bit like CH. I suppose I just go where the characters tell me to go. I start off with the characters, and then the situation is. I suppose I like opposites, right enough. Mm. Yeah, opposites maybe, but it can be any kind of opposite. Opposite in wealth or station or something. There has to be something different, so that it's slightly surprising that they end up getting together. But beyond that, I don't think I actually have a favorite.
I do like that too, though. I like opposites attract when you don't expect, and then they also have to learn different things about each other or react. differently
Yeah.
because it's what they assume it's going to be. I think I like what Meara was saying about them going on a trip together. It's kind of like that joint questing thing.
Yeah.
You know, so instead of just the hero's journey, you have kind of the couple's journey through the story. I think that's
Yeah.
I think
My
that's
favorite thing is to pair tropes. So like I love friends to lovers with fake engagement.
Mhm.
Oh, I could write that.
Yeah, because your heart is breaking right in the middle because you know somebody's going to say I love you first. Somebody's going to fall first. What happens? There's so much.
I love that. I love Road Trip and Only One Bed. I love those together. And I like rivals to lovers with the opposites attract. So like Blue Stocking. So I wrote a book for Dragonblade in a previous series, which was a Blue Stocking and a Viscount who was very, very prim and proper. He was desperate to be accepted. And so it was like, no woman I would ever be with would do anything so radical as read a book. So just layering those onto each other. I love bringing two tropes together and just like mushing them all up.
I think that makes it fun too. So well, now we've done tropes, so we're going to have to do Henry Cavill.
I'm sorry. If Catherine didn't post it, I wouldn't have seen it, and I can't unsee it. And I'm going to go back, and I already saved it.
And there was so much scrolling. So if you're watching this, you want to go look at Catherine's. Was it in the readers group or on Catherine's personal page?
Okay, I was there. I saw it was on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine. She said she wanted it. She's keeping it. I don't remember anything else but him.
Well, if you go scrolling through Catherine's social media, then you should come across.
It could have been a historical group. It could have been her author page. It could have been her.
They're all fun places to look. You know, regardless, there are.
It was.
There are all fun places to look. So on that. Go ahead, Meara.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, it's like, you don't have to look for that guy. Any one of her book covers are.
Oh my God, this is true.
Like, wow.
Yeah.
Yowza.
She has great.
Those heroes would do it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. We were doing ad creatives for a big ad, and it's like trying to figure out where to put the text, and it's like, you can't put it there because it covers the parts we want to see. You've got to move it up. You got to move it up so you give us this, this space. But at the risk of objectifying men on romance novel covers, which we're also not going to do. Nope. So,
mine are dressed. They all have clothes on.
So how do your heroes come to you? Like I know CH, you talk a lot about your heroes talking to you. Do you get them first? Do you get the heroine first? Do you set out with a certain scenario that you want to write, and then you find the right people to fit in it, or do you get the characters?
Well, for this series, I knew that they were all related. There's 8 O'Malleys, 4 Garahans, 4 Flahertys, and they're family names, so I kind of pull on the family too. But once I have their name, then and I know the basic, they all look alike. They're all the dark-haired, dark-eyed, and then the Flahertys are all the auburn-haired, blue-eyed, like my grandfather's family. And then once I have that image in my head, and I have the name, and I know there's basic characteristics that I really want them to have. And there's probably some readers going to be like, why don't you ever write about this creepy guy who does blah, 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 or whatever? Because, it's nice to be able to redeem somebody. I have a really hard time with that because I'm like, oh, I don't like him, so I can't write about him. So I really do have like an image in my mind, and yeah, it might get boring though after a while. So I may have to, I have to rethink, because you don't want to be predictable. But there are some basic characteristics that are always going to be there. But as soon as I have their name, they're like, hey, here I am. I'm like, okay, let's go.
Sherry, you talked about this hero flowing onto the page for you. Is that do you normally get the hero fully formed, or is it something you usually have to lean into?
Absolutely not. For me, names are always a really hard thing for me. And so I'm always giving my daughter buy-in on my books. She's like the queen of names. I'll tell her what I want, And she'll say, but you're just going to change it, Mom. And I said, I know I'm going to change it, but you know, and so she really helps me with the names. But once they are formed, once I have that name and I'm like, that's it, then I can just roll with it. A lot of times for me, I'm either driving, because I have a day job. So I'm either driving to the office and something's going to click in my head, or I'm going to wake up in the middle of the night and my characters are talking to me. You know, I'll go to right after work and then I've got nothing until the middle of the night when they start jabbering at me.
That's just wrong. That's
It's
just
not
wrong.
it's not very convenient of them.
Well, they're British, aren't they? They're on British time.
They are.
Oh.
That's very, very true.
That makes sense.
But like CH mentioned, once I have that name, then everything just starts to work. And once I had Vincent's name for this book, it's probably one of the fastest books I wrote. So I was very, very, very happy with him and the male friends of his that will be spinoffs in the future. So.
Oh, and that's so much fun when you sit down to write and you already know the character a little bit from a previous book, and it's like, oh, I know your voice already. You know, I know who you are already. You get to find out more about you, but you're not starting so naked. You know, at the beginning.
Yeah, we'll make it definitely a lot easier to go forward. Because now I have my heroines and I have my heroes, so now I can just go with it.
Meara, what about you?
Yeah, I'm very character driven. So I have to form the characters first, and they become very vivid in my head. And you know, so of course I have the Farthingale families, I have the Braden families, I have, you know, so there's certain, and so the Farthingales are primarily the female heroines, and so you know that they're going to be fairly traditional, very innocent when it comes to men, not dumb, but you know, they just don't know men, and they have a penchant for getting into trouble, and their heroes are going to be very alpha, very protective, and these girls are going to run them ragged with the, you know, getting into one thing or another. But very much, and my characters do talk to me before I even sit down to write the book. And they all have very distinct personalities. So I have on one of in the Book of Love series I had done, one of them, we've got in the Miracle of Love, we've got Declan Quinton, who is very much a loner, right? And he's the one, I don't usually have muses for heroes or heroines or whatever, but he was the leopard. Every time I thought of him, it was just like this leopard with these leopard eyes just came on the screen, and I would just type this leopard guy. He was just great. So, but he's very much a loner, whereas his brother, who is in the Dance of Love, is very much a family man. He's a widower. He has a kid. He's the magistrate in Exeter. He's got his roots as opposed to the brother who doesn't. And so then it's very easy for me to mix and match them with the right heroines, and the plots just form around their personalities. So I always definitely very much character driven.
That makes sense. What about you, Mary?
Yeah, I start with the characters. They're not always fully formed, but I mean, I just have an idea, maybe something that they look like or something about their character that sets me off. And then a sort of story tends to form around it. And while I'm writing it, the character develops. So they don't always go where I want them to go, or even towards the right ending, which is really annoying sometimes. But
yeah,
it makes it exciting.
I think people assume, though, that because you're writing the book, you know what's going to happen. And you also have control over how it goes. But there's nothing worse than when you get to that point where you know that where you're trying to force things to go is not the place they have to go. Because, like, for me, it just comes like we're done. That's it. I'm just going to sit there and I'm going to keep looking at the screen because nothing is going to work the way it's supposed to work because I'm trying to go this way and they want to go this way. And so there's a lot less control, I think, than people assume that there is.
No, that's not what Emily said last time.
Well,
Emily has a
He's
dominatrix whip, and all my they do what she says they're gonna do.
I don't write like any of you, which is really interesting. So I start with tropes. So I plot out a series, just like light touch, but I'm like, right, what is like the theme of the series? Is it siblings? Is it like dangerous situations? Is it whatever? And then I think of titles of the books, and then I think about how each heroine or hero can be connected to the previous one. So like, is it a sibling, neighbor, cousin, enemy, to make sure that you see, you know, I'm drawing my lovely readers through the whole series. Then I'm like, right, tropes, and I try to pick at least 2, maybe 3 tropes per book. I think about the meet cute, and then I'm like, okay, I need names, and I just go to a baby name website and I just slot in a bunch of names. And then I'm like, oh, I can't have George and John in consecutive books, that's 2 similar sounding names. Then I can't have Arthur and Arnold because that's 2 A's. And if I've got, you know, 4 titles that all begin with B, that can't work. So I try and like mishmash that around. And then I'm like, right, okay, so if I've got this title with these 3 tropes, with this meet cute, with characters with these names, what is my like 1-line sentence for this book? And that's how I plot out a whole series in one go, and then I start to plot each individual book. So I'm very much plot driven first, and then so I'm like, okay, academic mathematician blue stocking meets a gambler who is convinced that he's the best at cards. That doesn't come from the characters, that comes from opposites attract, it comes from blue stocking. It doesn't necessarily come from someone walking into my head and introducing themselves. I very much have to go and look for them. I'm like, I've got tropes. Who wants to come with me on this trope adventure? You know, it's very much reverse. I'm very start with a plot, find the characters later.
So I know you write really detailed outlines. Do you find that you know by the time you get to the end of your outline and start writing, do you know who your characters are? Do you know their voice? Because I think there's a certain amount of discovery for pantsers. As you get towards the end of the book, you realize that they're not the same as they were.
I'm going to be honest here. Most of my heroines and sometimes my heroes are mishmashes of either people I know or with the that I start with. Who they are. By the end of the outline, I'm like, yes, I know who you are now. But people, because
Yes.
Watching people going, oh, I would never have reacted like that. That's interesting. I'll remember that for later.
Yeah.
I can't be the only one.
Hear
Please
something
speak up.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
There's a lot in my family.
I have a very large family, and it is very convenient for me.
Yes, exactly.
Well, ladies, it was a delight to talk to you this time. I appreciate you taking the extra time for us so that we had some time to talk afterwards, since we are the Brady Bunch this week.
Can I be Jan? Sorry.
Yes, as long as I don't have to be Marcia, you can be Jan.
Marsha.
I don't want to be Marcia or Alice. I'll be Peter or Bobby.
Okay.
But it was such a delight to talk to you. I'm really excited about the books. Every week there are a whole new slew of books that I want to read, and the beautiful part about it is that they're all in Kindle Unlimited, and so you can read from one to the other without having to make a choice about whether you want to purchase, because you can just read with your subscription and keep going and going and going. Dragonblade books are always the very best deal, pre-order and release. So grab them right away, and I'll make sure I pop the links in the comments. So if you haven't gotten yours yet, you can go ahead and grab them. And ladies, thanks again for taking the time. Go look for the Henry Cavill poster. Haven't seen it already.
Thanks. It was fun.
Thank you.
It was nice
Thanks
to
for
see
taking the
everybody.
time.
Bye.
Thank you.